Hi, I wanted to welcome you to Adobe Illustrator Creating Your Own Graphics seminar. It is kind of like a 2 hours all the way to learn how to start working with Adobe Illustrator. And I'm going to ask you a little bit some questions before we start because we want to see where you're at. We posted the bit.ly link over here on the board if you want to follow me with my files, but if you want to do your own file, that's okay, because with Illustrator you're basically going to draw everything that we're going to do here in the class. So a little bit about me. I'm an Adobe Illustrator certified expert. I teach here the ACA exam, and I also teach the ACA for Adobe Illustrator. I've been using Illustrator from day one, and I have like a soft spot for it. So I love Illustrator a lot. And what am I using it for? Creating logos, creating style guide, prototyping, infographics, marketing collaterals, and all kind of stuff like that. So in general, what Illustrator is a vector-based application. So everything that you're gonna do today, it is vector-based, meaning it's all object-oriented. So if you did a class with me before on Photoshop, it's just the opposite. Forget about what we learned the last few weeks ago. Illustrator works just the opposite than Photoshop, but they do work together as well. So you can place Adobe Illustrator file within Photoshop. You can place Adobe Photoshop file within Illustrator. They're going to behave exactly like Adobe Photoshop in Illustrator, but you also can trace images and work with that and make them vector based. So before we start, I want to hear something from you guys. But what I prepared here is what we're going to do here. We're going to use the Pathfinder. We're going to use shapes. We're going to create some kind of a symmetry. We're going to manipulate anchor point. We'll create shapes. We'll adjust strokes and curves. And we'll prepare icons for final destination if we want to go and do that. So what you have here is basically, I have a whole kind of PDF, how you get started with Illustrator. And if later on you want to relate to that, you can. So I just created some stuff here to look at artboards and to look at the stuff that we're going to do, which basically, yes?
Sorry, where do we find that?
This is where the bit.ly is. If you download that, you get all the files, including the PDF that you have. So you see here, this is the link, and you can download it from there. And you're going to find it everything here, and then working with gradient and opacity and all kind of stuff like that. So you can see here, you have that. So before we kind of start, you don't need to have this file right now with you. That's for later to look into it. I want to talk to you a little bit about who you are and why you're here and what do you expect from that. So we'll start from you.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm interested in marketing, so I'm hoping to be able to use this and create like marketing materials.
Okay, great. Did you use Illustrator before?
I have, but I'm not like an expert in it, so I want to practice.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm like Catherine. I'm interested in marketing and I want to use it to create logos and whatnot. I don't have all that much familiarity with Illustrator, but I am familiar with the Creative Suite.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yes.
Melvin, what was the other person? What program are you using?
Illustrator?
Oh yeah, Illustrator, and then I'm taking class 1 because it's required, but 2 I just want to learn how to make logos and things.
Okay. All right. Yes.
I'm Maura. For work, I use Creative Suite a lot, and developing logos is something that I need to start doing, and I'm not completely familiar with Illustrator, so I want to get better at it.
Okay. So in this class, I mean, we can get into the logos. I'm not sure we're going to have time for that because we'll see how it works. We have other classes. Like in a few weeks, we have creating icons, so it's more advanced. It's on top of this class, so people come back and forth to that. So we'll try to do as much as we can, and then we can always go into type and look at the stuff. The good news about Illustrator, even if you don't have my core files, I can tell you open a new file and we'll draw it. Because Illustrator is just the opposite in Photoshop, that you needed the files in the seminar to start doing some stuff. Here we can do our own stuff. So why are people kind of scared of Illustrator a little bit in the beginning? Because you have to do the stuff. It's a lot easier in the end of the day than Photoshop, I think. But in the beginning, people get scared because there's certain things in Illustrator that you have to get used to, and especially it's the selection tool. How you select your object and how you look at them inside your layers panel once you start working. So what we're going to do is we are going to launch Illustrator. And let me know if you have that. This is Illustrator 2019, which is the latest version that we have for Illustrator. What version you guys have?
2018.
18. 19? Okay.
Whatever they give to the.
19 also?
Yeah.
So I think also in 2018 you still have the preferences panel and the properties panel, which is really cool. So you're not gonna have, like, we're not gonna get into stuff that's completely new. A few things are new in 2019, but we're probably not gonna get into it anyway. But this is basically the UI when you open it. More or less looks the same for all of us. What we do in the beginning in Illustrator, I wanted you to do Command K. I mean, is everybody using Mac here today? Cool, so I can use just one shortcut, which is Command K. And Command K takes you to Illustrator Preferences by default. And over here, you can decide of stuff in the beginning or a little bit later. So I just wanted you to know about it because we might jump into the preferences back and forth during the class. Command K is actually the shortcut for all the preferences file for Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and Bridge in the Creative Suite or Creative Cloud. So it's good to remember that. So if tomorrow you're going to use Photoshop, you know where to look for the preferences. But in Illustrator, I'm just going to cancel that. In Illustrator, there's another area now that it's new, which is really awesome. And what we're going to do here, before we start everything, we're going to just say open. Do you see the word open? And let me know if you do have some of my files, because we might use some of the stuff to open some of my files to start looking at them. Were you able to download the files?
Yeah.
Yes. So you can see here, you have the handout, and inside the handout, you're gonna have like the PDF and everything. And inside the special seminar, you do have the handout and you do have the files. Do you see that? These are the files that we have, and we'll try to use them today to start working with Illustrator. So using Mac, do you have the files that we
Yes,
have?
I have.
Great. Good. And just tell us a little bit about you, because everybody introduced each other.
I'm a first year grad studying digital social media at Artboard, and
So you want to know a little bit about using and what? Yeah.
I want to know because
What?
I'm
Yeah.
design
Great.
design.
One of the things that everybody mentioned, that you marketing and you want to do like collateral for marketing. If you want to do like brochures and booklets, big ones, that's not a really Illustrator. That will be InDesign. What's the difference between the three of them? In Photoshop, you're creating the beautiful images. You can draw, you can create the beautiful images, you can export all kind of stuff to bring in and start to do like composite and all kind of stuff like that. In Illustrator, you're creating your beautiful graphics. You're going to create the graphics, you're going to create the logos, you're going to create style guide and all kind of stuff like that. So if you need, let's say, a postcard to do, like a like back and forth postcard for like something, you can do it in Illustrator. That's not a big deal. If you need to do like a threefold brochure, perfect in Illustrator. But once you start to do like big brochures, let's say you are working to the end of the citation or something like this, and you want to present something with 50 pages, beautiful, engaging graphics, you're going to do the presentation within InDesign. Why? Because InDesign is your layout program, and InDesign will handle better pages and printing the pages and paginating and do all kind of like master pages and things like this. So you have to kind of figure out, what do you do in Illustrator? We do have artboards in Illustrator, they look like pages maybe, but they're not pages. So you can do a presentation in Illustrator. So let's say tomorrow you have like a product that you want to show to somebody, and you want to start showing to them how you're going to engage your new clients with it. Yes, you can do the presentation within Illustrator and have different kind of artboards and present it to them. You do have a presentation mode in Illustrator as well, but not in 2018. Only in 2019 you have a presentation mode. In 2018, if you want to present it, you have to right away make it into a PDF. In 2019, you can still stay in Illustrator and then present it and then decide if you want to do a PDF. And I'm going to show you what I mean in a minute, because you can leave and stay within Illustrator. Does that make sense? So you kind of have to figure out, because sometimes people come to special seminars in Photoshop and they'll say, well, I need to do a catalog. And I'm looking at them, you're not going to do it in Photoshop. In Photoshop, you're just going to adjust everything, but then the catalog is in InDesign. So everything that booklets and presentation, like even the PDF that I gave you, I made it in InDesign because I placed all the stuff that I wanted to talk to you about within InDesign, and I made a PDF from it. So InDesign carries everything with layout, but everything that goes in there comes from Illustrator and Photoshop, and of course you can type stuff. So you cannot jazz up a lot of stuff in InDesign because you cannot handle images and anything, but you can put it in there. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go into the first folder here, and you're just going to go in, double click an interface, and I'm going to click on one file that says shaped ungroup. And the only reason we're doing it right now, because we want to see the image in front of us. And then this is basically what I have here. This is an image that was done completely in Illustrator, everything. So everything in here is object oriented. One thing to understand right away with Illustrator, as soon as you see a file that looks like this, you know that's not one object. It's already tons of objects together. So as soon as you have more than one color on your screen in Illustrator, it's more than one object. It will never be tons of colors and only one object. So everything is an object in Illustrator. So what does it mean? So the first thing we're going to look at our interface. There's one thing that you don't have here in 2018. In 2019, what they decided to do is they bring you in a smaller toolbox to start with. In 2019, right away, you're going to see a very long toolbox with a lot of tools. So if we do beginnings today, we don't really need to see all the tools, right? So what they did for us, they went, if you go to Window, and then Toolbar, in 2019 only, they made an advanced toolbar and a basic toolbar. Do you see that? You don't have it in 2018. So if we are going to go for a minute to the advanced toolbar, look what happens here. This is what you have now. And then in the beginning, people say, well, I'm not going to use so many things. Why do I need this massive toolbar? And that's where they created it. Since you have 2018 today, and the rest of us have 2019, we're going to stay with the advanced toolbar. I'm just going to show you that you can go back and forth depending on the complexity of the stuff. What am I using? I'm using the advanced all the time. Why? Because I'm used to it. Because the little guy just came in like a year ago, and I'm thinking if I'm already using all the tools, I might as well use everything together. So what does it mean, the toolbar over here? It's a lot of stuff. One of the things that really drives everybody crazy in Illustrator, it's the massive toolbar. Look what we have here on the side. You have a regular selection tool. Next to it, you have a direct selection tool that we're going to look into it in a second. But you see a tiny little arrow inside? If you click and hold on your mouse, just hold it down, you can go, and then when you see the arrow here, you snap it out. And now you can snap your tool. That's really great in Illustrator. And why are they doing it? Because there's so many tools, so you might as well snap them sometime and start working with them. Does that make sense? I did give you in the PDF a cheat sheet about how the toolbox looks. And that's something to kind of like learn, because what happens is, let's say I clicked on the group selection tool, and we all did it now, and I closed it. And then later on you come back to Illustrator and you want to see the direct selection tool, and you say, well, I don't have it. What you really want to remember, who inside. I call them the roommates, because there's more than one tool a lot of time in one little box, and that's the stuff you want to start kind of remembering where everything is. Of course, in the class today, I'm going to tell you where everything is, but once you start using it, you need to remember where they are. Also remember that they inherit the last time you did something. So what does it mean? If I worked on some tool the whole day, and then I close Illustrator and come to it even in 3 weeks, if I didn't trust the basic preferences, Illustrator thinks you're still working on it. If you have a certain typeface that you chose long time ago, and you did a certain thing for your type, like a kerning on tracking or anything, Illustrator says, you did it a long time ago, you didn't tell me not to do it anymore, I'm doing it. So you have to run it, pay attention to what you have on your screen. Does that make sense? So I'm looking at the toolbox. What do we have here? We have a magic wand. We also have a lasso tool, but it's not the lasso tool from Photoshop that everybody is used to, like select area and isolate. You cannot isolate an image over here. So what does it mean? If you place an image inside Illustrator from Photoshop with your face and another friend, and you just want you to be there, you have to go back to Photoshop to cut it out. Illustrator is not going to handle cutting out images. It will crop them, and there's another advanced tool you can mask it around, but basically it doesn't deal with pixels. So all the things that isolating and Photoshop stuff and cutting out layers, that's over there. Does that make sense? And then it's replaced in Illustrator. And then so I have the pen tool that you can go in and draw some stuff. We have the line tool. You have a type tool that we might look into it. We have also other shape tools. So all the tools that you have here, there's a lot of tools here, and each one of them has a little arrow below that. That's going to be more than one. And what we're going to do today, we're going to look at certain tools, and mainly we're going to concentrate on creating certain kind of shapes, and then maybe type a little bit and do some stuff with type, and then work with something called a Pathfinder, that you can take one shape and from the other shape you can create another shape. So that's what you do in Illustrator a lot. Even if you don't know how to draw, you can draw with the object themselves. Does that make sense? But what you have here all the way down, this is your fill and your stroke. Do you see that here? This is not a foreground or a background in Illustrator. So as soon as you start working with Illustrator, every shape, it's going to ask you, do you want to fill it with a certain color, or you want to have a stroke around it as a frame, or not a stroke, or just a stroke or a fill. You don't have foreground and background. Does that make sense? So if I open, so let's say this one. When you're looking at this image right now, do you see it looks like you have a white background, right? That's not actually a white background. Guess what it is? It is transparent. It looks white. If you wanted a white background to print something that's definitely going to be white, you have to create your own white background. You have to create it with a rectangle. That's how Illustrator works. If I printed this right now on a red paper, guess what it's going to be? This little image is going to be on top of a red paper. Does that make sense? So how would we know that? On the right side, you see the workspaces. You don't have one of the workspaces that we have that's called Essential. You see there's one. You probably have, or maybe you do. You do have Essentials?
Yeah.
And then you have Essential Classic, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's click on Essential and let's see what we have here. Because that's another thing that we do in the Adobe application. We're looking at workspaces that we have already, and then they give us suggestions what workspace to use. So you can see here I have my own workspace, I have another one for my ACA class, and this is basically workspaces that Adobe suggested you to do. So if I'm going to go to just a simple one, what I'm telling you, I'm going to have only 3 things here. I'm going to have the properties, the layers, and the libraries right now. Because other stuff that I'm going to do, I can bring it from my properties panel. If you want to use a different kind of workspace, you can, because all the panels are basically over here. Does that make sense? All of them are over here. You also have the control panel that by default in Essential Workspace it's turned off. And why is it turned off? There is a rumor going on that sooner or later, I'm not sure it's going to be soon, they're going to get rid of the control panel and everything you're going to do is from the properties panel. Because they think it's taking a lot of real estate on your computer and they wanted it. But we can go and look at it. If you go to Window and bring the control panel, you can see I have a little control over here that it's basically almost identical to the properties panel when you start working. So do you see here I have properties and I have the control all the way up here. So what does it mean properties? Let's all look at the properties. When nothing is selected in Illustrator, it tells you no selection. Do you see that? And that's what's important. Then it tells you what document do you have, how many artboards, you have only one, and then it tells you, do you want to see the rulers or not? Directly you can look at it in your properties, which is really helpful because if you don't have, let's say if all of you use, let's say 2017, which some people are still using it, they don't have a properties panel. So if I'm going to tell them turn off the rulers, then they're going to say, well, I don't know where it is. It's under the view menu bar. A lot of stuff here, it's going to be under the view menu bar. But nothing is selection is a simple properties panel that deals with the look of the image that you have in front of you. You do have rulers or not? Do you want to have grids or not? And the last one here, that's your transparent grid. And that's what shows you that's basically it's not white. Does that make sense? And you can turn it on and off. If you later on when you start working, you can always go to view and hide and show the transparency grid from here. Does that make sense? Really important to remember that because you're going to go back and forth to check it out sometime. What else do you have here? You have guides, so you can click to hide guides if you had guides. You can lock guides. You can hide the smart guides or turn on the smart guides. You can snap guides, and you see directly from here, you can go even to your preferences. And then you can go to the preferences, even to the document setup, when nothing is selected. As soon as we select something, let's go to our toolbox and click on this regular selection tool and just click on one circle. I want you to take a look what's going on in your properties panel. Do you see what's going on there? It will tell you it's a path because everything that it's object in Illustrator, it's basically going to be a path. That's how they call it. It tells you the size. It tells you where it is within your artboard. It tells you the fill. It tells you the stroke. It tells you if you want to change opacity. And if you start doing the special effect, if you click here, it will bring the special effect. If you click over here on other panel, it's going to bring your appearance panel out. So in a way, you don't have to have so many panels already. From the properties, you can go to different panels to start working. Some panels you're going to need to use and download because they're not part of the properties, like the brush panel. When you start drawing later with Illustrator, the property doesn't even pay attention. You have to have a brush panel out. Does that make sense? So if I don't want that, I can close that. What else do you have here? You have some quick actions. You can offset a path. You can recolor. You can arrange. And we start do global edit. I don't think you have a global edit on yours. Do you have?
I do.
You do have global edit? Okay, good. I don't remember which one was in 2018 and 2000. So what does it mean, global edit? If you click on start global edit, look what happened. Illustrator will recognize the shapes that are the same, and it will say, do you want to global edit them? So what does it mean? I'm going to go in and make that look like that. So look what start happening. All the round shapes are going to be like this. If I'm going to go in and do something really tiny, they are going to look like this. I'm not even rotating it because it's just a circle. But everything you're going to do here, you're going to go and you're going to take everything that used to be a circle, and look what happens here. And then if I stop the global edit, basically this is what I have on my screen. So it's really great for objects that Illustrator will identify. So let's say you made like an infographics and all of them has squares along the boards, and all of a sudden you want to make the square look different. All you need to do is select one and do a global edit. If you don't want to do a global edit, don't use that. You can just do one by one. So now you can see I kind of messed up my file. Not a big deal. First of all, Illustrator has unlimited amount of undos. No history panel is needed. So you can go to edit and undo, redo until you want. Or you can also revert to the last saved one. So if I'm reverting it, you can see it goes back to normal. Does that make sense? So now we're just going to look at more stuff. I want to zoom into it. The easiest way to zoom in Illustrator is basically to use it with a shortcut. If you hold down with your thumb on the command key and tap with the other finger on the plus sign, you can start zooming in. And then if you want to go and see the rest of the stuff, hold down the space bar. That will take you to the hand tool, and you can see some extra stuff. And if I go command and minus, I can zoom out. Why am I using that and not really the zoom tool on the toolbox? Because most of the time what I'm going to do in Illustrator, and you'll see in a second, we're going to start drawing. So there's a lot of time drawing and zooming, so you zoom in with a shortcut. If you do not remember the shortcuts, go to View, and under the View menu bar, you can see the shortcuts. Zoom in, zoom out, fit Artboard in window, fit all in window, actual size, and hide edges. Everything is going to be in here. Under the View menu bar, I call it the show and tell. I want to see something, I don't want to see something. I want to see something, I don't want to see something. But you do need to remember one thing. If you don't want to see something and you turn it off, Illustrator is not going to remind you to turn it on. So you're going to say, whoa, why don't I see this and this? Well, you turned it off 2 weeks ago. You're going to have to remember, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. So that's the thing that you have. The rest of the panels are over here. So anytime you wanted other panels, you can always bring them over and start working them and maybe ignore whatever you have in the property. It's really up to you. Does that make sense? So we're going to first look just at the regular selection tool. And before we start drawing, and we're going to zoom in. And I'm going to select just the circle again. What is this selection tool doing? It's selecting, and you can move it back and forth anywhere that you have. And you have a bounding box around it that you can go in and make the image smaller or bigger, the object. And if you want to stay true to the aspect ratio, you are going to hold on the shift key, and it's going to be a perfect circle. Since it is a perfect circle, if I'm going to rotate it for outside, it's not going to do anything. So now I might go in and make for me kind of an ellipse. So now you can see if I go around it, I can rotate the ellipse. Why can I do this stuff automatically here? Because as soon as you click on an object in Illustrator, you have bounding boxes. And that's what you happen when you drew it with the regular selection tool. And you're going to tell me, well, what else can I do? I can move it anywhere. So see, I'm moving it. And I'm making it a little bit bigger and a little taller. You can basically do anything you want here back and forth because these are not pixels. And because they are not pixels, You can make them bigger and smaller as much as you want all the time. But could be a situation that you are going to select an object with the regular selection tool, and all of a sudden you're not going to see a bounding box. And you're going to say, what is it? What happened is, if you go to view and hide bounding box, do you see that? There's a place that says hide bounding box, and you hide it. Sometimes people will hide the bounding box by default because they want to align, and the bounding box actually irritates them. If I am hiding it now, it's like I said before, it's hidden. So don't get scared if you don't see the bounding box, because there's no bounding box. You basically cannot do anything in terms of transformation. You have to go to the transformation tools. If you want to see it again, you have to go to view, show bounding box. So the shortcut is Command Shift B, back and forth. And why do I remember it? Because I'll go back and forth between them, because a lot of time I would like to see them and then I don't want to see them. Because sometimes when you align it to other stuff, maybe you want to see stuff or maybe you don't want to see stuff. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what's going on with the regular selection tool. In a second, we're going to start working, and we're going to start working with the direct selection tool and the group selection tool, and you're going to see the difference between them. The other thing I want to show you before we move on is what else going on in the properties panel. I'm going to go in, let's say, to the layers. I have a lot of layers over here. I made it into layers when I decided to do this stuff. And when you have a layers panel, and I can bring it over here, I can turn off all the elements that I have, and look at that. All of a sudden, this is the design that I have. And then I add some other stuff to it, and then I add some other stuff to it. And then you see it looks like a different design. You have a visibility button on the side. The difference between this one and Photoshop, you don't really need to use layers if you don't want to. Layers are really for organization. What does it mean? You basically can never flatten a file in Illustrator. I know it sounds like, whoa, what do you mean? But we're going to do something together. So let's look at that. I'm going to turn off this one, and I might go in and Command Z so I can see. See what happened when I do Command Z again? Unlimited amount of undos, back and forth for everything. Go into the select menu bar and do select all. Do you see the shortcut? Command or Control A. And you see everything is selected. Look at your layers panel on the right side. Do you see a lot of little squares with different kind of colors? These guys are the selection indicators. That shows you that you selected something or everything in Illustrator. If you want to deselect, you can always go to select and deselect, but guess what? I never go there. I just click somewhere on the screen with a selection tool, and it's deselected it. That's it. So everything is kind of like deselected across the board. I can go in, let's say I'm going to tell you, and I can actually make the layers panel thumbnail a little bit bigger so you can see it a little bit better. I'm going to go to the flyout menu and panel option, and I'm going to make that maybe 40 in pixels. So you see it's a little bit bigger. To understand Illustrator, how it works is, if I click on the top layer and I want to do something now, guess what? Nothing is happening right now. This is how you select a layer in Photoshop. Because guess what's in there? There's a lot of other stuff in there. These guys are not layers. What are they? They're a path within a layer. How many paths you can do within one layer? As many as you want. As much memory as you have. So if I'm going to tell you now, select the top layer that has small round or something like this. I don't know even how I named it even. I named it small top circles. This is how you select it. Do you see that? You need to see a little indicator. Do you see that? Now you can do anything with it. That's actually, once you know that, you start getting used how to illustrate. I know it's frustrating because if you use Photoshop, it's just the opposite. So you have to actually select the entire layer. What if you want to select an object within this layer? You can either select the object on the screen or open it here and select it here. Does that make sense? You're selecting. This one is selected now. And if I turn it off, I can turn it off. So every object over there, you can select and do anything to it and even lock it. To understand it even more, click on the bottom layer, circle. Go to the flyout menu and say flatten artwork. I know I said you cannot flatten artwork, but they mean over here that all the layers are going to go to one area. Just click flatten layer and look what happened. They call it circle. Is it flattened? Absolutely not. If you did that in Photoshop and you save it with the same name, you're going to get a nervous breakdown because you lost everything that you have because it's all flattened. Here, guess what? Everybody is still here dancing. Do you see that? All the paths are in there. Nothing is flattened. Does that make sense? So what is the difference between working like this and working with just layers? It's easier with layers because you organize it a little bit better. Think about, you put everything in one drawer or you have tiny little drawers to create some stuff. So it is really for organization, but if you don't want it, you don't want to use that because I can go in and continue working. Does that make sense? So I always suggest to people, if you hate the layer system in Illustrator, and some people don't like it so much, don't even do layers, but at least group your object because otherwise, look how it's going to look. So many things there. How are you going to find everything? It's going to take you forever. And this is a simple one. Like that took me, like we're going to do something like it today. And it's going to take you like 5 minutes to do something kind of like it. And then it's still hard to find the objects that you have. Also, how can I go in now and let's say I want to decide that I want to go to all of the orange circles and I want to group them again. So there's not so many over here. So I can basically select one object in Illustrator, hold down the Shift key and select all the others. So let's do it. Select one, hold on the Shift key and start selecting more and more and more. See, I'm selecting. And until everything is selected, you can see now all of them are selected. So even if you're looking at your layers panel, you can see all the orange circles are selected, right? In this case, it's easy. If I want to, let's say, group it, I'm going to go to Object and Group. And you see I have a group over here right away, and I can double click on it and I can call it orange circles. So you can start with ungrouping it and then group them later. But you're going to tell me, okay, well, I had 10 circles now. What if I have 200 circles like this and you're drawing, and didn't group them and didn't pay attention? And now you want to group them. What are you going to do? There is a little system in Illustrator that's going to make it easier for you to select object that has the same properties. What does it mean? Click on the one line. And now pretend we have 200 lines there. I'm not going to start clicking on each one of them. That's going to take forever and I want to group it. So you can go to Select and Same. Do you see the word Same? And it's asking you, based on what you want to select it. Same appearance, same blending mode, same fill and stroke, same stroke color, maybe same stroke weight. If I did same stroke weight, it selected all of them. If I did maybe same stroke colors, maybe it selects something else that have the same. You can make decisions about what you have on your screen. Of course, there's a lot of them the same, that's going to be a problem. But you see here, now I just selected them. Now I can go into Object and Group. And that's going to go back here and be the lines. and then, oh, you know what? It just selected some other stuff for me by mistake, but I'm gonna go back and group that, and I group the areas that I have, and it's somewhere around there. It's just gonna be the group of the lines that I have. So that's how you can do a lot of the stuff. Some stuff you're gonna go by color, some stuff by properties, and then you can start grouping your stuff. We're gonna do one in a minute just for ourselves to start drawing. Does that make sense? Yes.
How is this different from global edit?
Oh, this one, it just selected all of them. The global edit, if you want to go in and manipulate them. So let's say if I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to go into global edit, it is going to go in and tells you, let's say if you select something like this and global edit, that's going to look at the global edit, and then it's going to go and do the stuff. This one's selecting them and making them into a group. Okay? So now, one more thing before we move on. You see I have here libraries. What are these libraries? Any of you are familiar with the libraries in Adobe Creative Cloud? These are libraries that do not belong to Illustrator. They belong to the entire Creative Cloud. So any assets that you make, you can create your own library and put assets over there and start working. For you guys, it's really going to be necessary because let's say you two working together on a huge project. So then what you're going to do, maybe create a library that you can start putting all kind of stuff in there and start collaborating. How would you create, let's say, a new library just for yourself? Look at mine. I have a lot of libraries there. And all the libraries that I have here, these are libraries that I either collaborated with people or created them for myself. Every time I have a little person sitting next to it, this is a collaboration of stuff that I have with somebody that I have. So you can see I have different kind of libraries if I want to go and start working with the stuff that I want. If you create your own library, you can go to the flyout menu and say create new library and decide to name it either for a project. So let's say it's a class event that you have and you have to collaborate. You can give it a name. I'm going to call it Chana Test for now. And click create. And basically, if even I select all and go to the bottom of my library and click on the plus sign and click graphics, look what happens over here right now. The graphics are there. So if I can go now and open InDesign and I want to drag these graphics to InDesign, guess what? I can do that. I can drag these graphics into Photoshop. These are, and if you're using Dimension or XD or all kind of other, some of you probably using even After Effects for animation and maybe using Premiere to do stuff. These libraries belongs to everything. So if I'm going to go in and open something else, let's say I don't think I have another object over here, but if I'm going to go in and let's say open like InDesign for a second, and I really want to work with InDesign right now and start placing the stuff there and bring it over, I can just go, let's say, file a new document, and I'm just going to wrap something really simple, and then I create stuff like this over here. But I really want to go in and go into my library, and I can look at the last library that I did, and this one I'm going to find the library that I called it Chana Test, and look at this. And I'm in InDesign right now. See that? I don't have to go in and find the file. There's a little cloud on it, and if I fix that, it's going to be a dynamic links between them. Does that make sense? So you want to start working with libraries. Again, it's not necessarily just for Illustrator, but I mentioned it in every Adobe class that I'm doing. These libraries, I also have them here. If you have any app that you're using in Illustrator, I mean in the iPad that has Adobe iPad apps, all these libraries are there, and I can bring stuff from here to here and vice versa. So it's really a nice collaboration tool, especially if you're working environment, because you probably have a lot of projects that you have to do with certain people. I know now I'm working on a project with 5 people, and we collaborated with one library that we have. So where is it if I want to go and play? It is actually on my Creative Cloud files, and that's where I have stuff. and that's where I'm collaborating with other people with the stuff that I have. And one of the libraries over here, it is going to be, see here, if I double click here, all of us put some certain libraries already, and we're all collaborating with the files that we have. So everybody knows what's going on there. So we have somebody collaborated with us, and it's all good. Does that make sense? So this is kind of a workflow that you guys can work with. So if you make your library, that's okay. But now we're going to go and close that. You don't have to save it. And basically, we're going to do File and New. Like I told you before, the good news in Illustrator, I do have a lot of files for you to start with, but basically we can start playing as soon as we want to work with. So this is my File New, and I have intents. I have mobile intent, web, print, film and video, and art and illustration. And then each area that you see here, what do you see over here? These are templates that you can start downloading for free to get some inspiration if you want to work. So let's say tomorrow, if you are on print and you need to do a certain, let's say, postcard or some, let's say, a flyer. I'm going to look at the view, and then they're showing you a little flyer and giving you some kind of inspiration. Do you want to start working with something like it? If you do, you can download it and start fixing it and do that. Everything is free for you guys to use. Just bear in mind, whenever you see an image in some of these, you might not see it anymore when you open it, because these are images that are coming from Adobe stock, and if you don't own them, you cannot use them. And a lot of stuff also, you're going to get an error message with the type, and it's going to tell you we're using type from Creative Cloud, so would you like to update? Why do they do that? Because they kind of want to promote it, right? If somebody uses their template, they want them to use that as is. I'm not going to go and open that. I want you to go to print, and then I want you to use letter, which is basically by default, it's 8.5 by 11, but in Illustrator, when you're working, is basically the default is point. What does it mean, point? That's the measurement. If you want to go in here, make it inches, it's going to be 8.5 by 11. What else do you have here? You can name the file. Let's call it shapes. You can decide the orientation. You're going to decide how many artboards would you like to have. 1, 2, 5, 16. Guess how many you can do? 1,000 artboards. Are you going to do 1,000? I never use more than 50. I don't know. Never use that. But you can do up to 1,000 artboards in Illustrator. So I can decide on the amount of artboards. I can decide on a bleed. What is a bleed? This is the area if you send something for print and you have a nice image in the front or something and you want it to go to the edges, you have to allow a bleed. Otherwise, you're going to see a white area around the edges. So we can allow to bleed or not, but we're not going to do anything with bleed. But usually the bleed industry standard is 0.125 or 0.25 depending on the printer that you're going to work with. What else do you have here? Advanced options. Really important to make that raster effect 300 pixel per inch, and that relates to if you do any drop shadow and anything that has a raster effect to it, it will do it kind of a nice way. It's going to be high res. If not, you're going to start seeing your drop shadow kind of like fuzzy. And then you have something says more setting, which is the same like the others. It just gives you the old dialog box, and the only difference here, if you have more than one artboard, here you can decide on the spacing of the artboard. Not that important because you can space the artboard yourself. I'm just going to click create document, and I have one document and it's one artboard right now. Since we have 2 hours only to work, and I want to show you also artboards, we're going to go back and forth and look how we can work with artboards as well. But the first thing that we're going to do here, we're going to draw something. So let's click on our rectangle tool. If you click on the letter M, you see the rectangle tool, and if I bring it out, you see I have a rectangle, I have a rounded rectangle, I have an ellipse, I have a polygon, I have a star, I have a flare tool if I want to go and work with it. And then the other shapes that I have the line tool, the arc tool, and all kind of stuff like that. So this is, believe it or not, only the shape tools that you're getting to draw. And you're going to say, well, that's a drawing tool. How do I do more than that? With the pen tool, with the pencil tool, with the brush, with combination of bunch of objects together, you're going to draw and create something completely different. Does that make sense? And we're going to take a look at few basic things here. So the first thing I want you to do is just click on the rectangle and click one time on the screen. If you click one time on the screen, you're going to see a generic size. And the generic size that you have is 1.3889. I'm going to change it, and I'm going to make that 2 by 2. And this is what I have here. One of the rules in Illustrator, if you wanted to deselect it now, guess how you deselect it? You can go into select and deselect, but if you really want to select it automatically, you're going to click on your selection tool and deselect. You never deselect with the tool itself, because if you're still on your rectangle tool and you're thinking you're deselecting, guess what you're doing? You're building another one. So the tool themselves, it's not for deselecting. You always select or deselect with the selection tool. Does that make sense? So this square right now has a white fill and a black stroke. How do I know? All the way up in my control, do you see the black fill and the black stroke, the white fill and the black stroke? In your properties panel, you see the white fill and the black stroke. In your layers panel, you can see also. And later on, if you go to your swatch panel and everything else that you have, you'll see the same thing. They're basically telling you, what do you have in front of you? What if I want to colorize this area? It has to be selected. What does it mean? If I deselect and you say, well, I want to make it orange, I'm going to click here and make it orange, and you're going to tell me, it's not happening. Why not? Nothing is selected, nothing is happening. And this is how people quite confused with Illustrator, because they say, well, I'm clicking on it, I'm on the layers panel over here, and then I'm going to go back here and I'm on it and nothing is happening, because you didn't really select it. Physically it has to be selected. Does that make sense? So now we are going to go into the properties panel, click when you say the word fill, and look what you have there. That's why I like so much the properties panel, because it shows you the swatch panel and it will show you also the color panel in one place. So basically I don't have to even open them if I don't need to. I can have it directly from your properties panel. And then I'm going to go into your swatch, and let's say I'm going to do it dark red, and then I'm going to click on, I'm going to do it just dark red, and then I'm going to click, I just made it again, I'm going to do it dark red, and then over here I click on the stroke, and then I'm going to make it the stroke, let's say dark green, and then click on the word stroke, and look what I can do. I can make the stroke a little bit bigger. Let's say I make it 12. So do you see within the appearance panel, within the properties, do you have also the properties of the stroke? It's going to tell you this is your stroke panel, and then you can see how they're connected to each other. And then you can see this is a corner, this is a round, and this is a bat thing that you have. So basically this is how that this has a bevel, this has round, and this has a corner. So that's the appearance of the stroke that you have there. What else do you have here? By default, the stroke is aligning to the center. If you go back here, the stroke is aligning to inside. The stroke is aligning outside. Does that make sense? So if I'm going to click on the stroke as an aligning inside, and then I'm going to look here. Do you see here in the properties? It tells me what I have. I'm going to go back here. Do you see here? It's the different appearance of your stroke. Super important when you start working with Illustrator. I'm going to make it to the center. What else do you have here? Do you see the tiny dots that you have there? When you click on these little dots, you basically can go in and move it inside and make the rectangle as a round rectangle and bring it back to a regular rectangle. Does that make sense? If you want to make it unified, exactly the same for everything, you can click on your property where the transform panel is, and you see the 3 dots here, 4 dots here. You click on it, and that's going to extend your transform panel, and you can see the radius of your round corners. Does that make sense? So you can basically change it exactly to the same size that you want or somebody tells you. So everything is going to absolutely be perfect. Does that make sense? Or you can do it manually. But now I want to show you something that it's super important in Illustrator. What if you needed to do an object like this? And you need to do it all over the place, and it needs to stay a rectangle. And it needs to stay a rectangle with some kind of round corners. But then some people tell you to make it smaller or bigger. But they tell you, even if you make it smaller or bigger, I want it to be the same shape. It's just a little bit smaller. So you have to make a decision while you're working with it. So I want you to go in to your properties panel, to the transform, and click on the round corners and make the radius 3.75 all around. Now we are going to duplicate it. How would you duplicate it? The easiest way, of course, in Illustrator to do it is copy and paste. It will do edit. It will select that. You're going to do edit and copy, and edit and paste, and another one is showing up. That's a very easy way to do it. And I'm going to move it. So I have identical squares over there on my screen. Now I want somebody ask me to make it smaller. So let's click on the first one and click on the side and make it smaller. But remember what I told you? Make it smaller, but I want to have the same shape. Look what happened when I made the first one smaller. Why is it? Because I didn't tell the machine anything how to do it. In your properties panel, if you click on your extra in your transform, look what you have there. Scale corner and scale stroke and effect. You have to tell the machine if you want to scale the corner, or also you can scale the stroke and effect. If I'm going to say scale corner and scale stroke and effect and go into this one, and now I'm going to make it smaller, look what happens. Do you see the shape? Look absolutely the same, because I told it scale the corner accordingly and also scale the stroke accordingly. Does that make sense? That's super important in Illustrator, because otherwise you're going to create shape that you're not going to like. You can also tell it, I don't want you to do anything to the stroke. So what does it mean? I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to go back here and I say, do not scale the stroke and effect, just the corner. So look what happened. The stroke is not being scaled. You see, it stays whatever I had it, 17. So it is going to be kind of the same shape, but look what happened to the stroke. It's eating actually the object. So it's really important. What if you have a drawing of a person standing and you want to make tiny ones like this, and then all of a sudden you didn't tell it what to do, and that's when it starts to create a problem. You say, whoa, I thought it was like all kind of nice, and now when I shrink them, the stroke is taking over. So pay attention to that. Does that make sense? So I'm going to do Command Z a few times just to get kind of like to this area, to get into one. Because I want to show you another selection tool. And that's basically the most important tool that you have in Illustrator. Once you know how to use that, you're going to know how to use everything. What does it mean? You might work with a lot of graphics that you'll find on the internet, or you purchase from Adobe Store, or some graphic designer is going to give it to you. And you are the marketer, you're not a graphic designer, so you might not be able to draw it so beautifully. But then you're going to start working and you're going to say, well, I want to edit it. I don't like what I see. So that's what you do with your direct selection tool. Your direct selection tool in Illustrator is your editor. What does it mean? Do you see I'm selecting that? I might make the stroke even a little smaller. And that's the regular selection tool. It's all good. I'm deselecting. I'm going to go to my direct selection tool, the white arrow, this guy. The shortcut for it is the letter A. A, you go to the direct selection tool. V, you go to your regular selection tool. So I'm going to go to A, and I'm on the direct selection tool. If you click inside and start moving it, you're going to tell me, I don't see any change, any difference. And it's true. It's not even any difference. You're going to see it selecting and moving everything, and it looks like a regular selection tool without the bounding box. So basically, the direct selection tool never has a bounding box. Now, that's the core, and that's what's important. I'm going to zoom in, and look what I'm doing. I'm deselecting, and I'm going to select only on the path. Look what happened if I selected just the path. Look what happened to this anchor point. All of a sudden, I see my anchor points. If I click on any anchor point, look what I can start doing. If I click on this anchor point, that's what I can start doing. Try it. So all of a sudden, it's not a round rectangle. It's some kind of a weird looking shape that you wanted to do. Does that make sense? Deselect, reselect on the path. You want to see your anchors. You can select more than one anchor by holding down the Shift key. And now these two anchors are there. Do you see that? Play with it for a second. So you want to make sure you are selecting just on the path itself. If you select inside, guess what you're doing? Do you see that? Now it is selecting everything. Deselect outside, select on the path, and start moving the anchors. Does that make sense? So look what happened. What was it a minute ago? Right? It was a square. Not anymore. Right? I'm deleting it. I'm going to do another square. And this time what I want you to do is, don't even click on the square, but don't click on the screen to make it exactly. Click and drag a square. You can drag any size of square by holding down the Shift key. You constrain it, and if you're not, you can do anything. Do you see that? You just can draw. You don't have to click on the screen. When I click on the screen, does somebody tell me, do 200 of them that are all the same size? So of course I'm going to do them. But if I'm just drawing, I'm going to do my own. Now I want to change just one round corner. So look what I'm doing. Going to the direct selection tool, deselect, click around one corner and drag to activate one corner. What do you see here? Just one. And you can do stuff like this. I can go and activate this corner. This you cannot do with the regular selection tool. What do I have now? It looks like a lemon. I don't know, something like it, right? So now I created something different. If I click inside here and make it a little bigger, and I click simmer here, and now all of a sudden I drew something else that looks absolutely different than the other one. Does that make sense? I basically changed the whole thing that I have by using the direct selection tool. So when everybody gives you an object and you don't like it, where do you edit it? Direct selection tool. That's what it is. Deselect, reselect on the path, and reactivate. If you select inside, it will behave like a regular selection tool. Does that make sense? Yes? And you have to practice, because this is Illustrator. If you don't practice, it's not going to happen. This is how you edit object in Illustrator. I can place anything that you want over here. I can bring back the other ones, that all the red stuff that you have, and I can tell you, just edit that for me, and everything is going to be edited absolutely right away as soon as you have that. Does that make sense? So now we're going to look at another tool, and then together we are going to edit stuff. What if you needed to do a fast pie chart? We do have pie charts in Illustrator, but they're not working as great as everybody wants. But you needed to do something very simple right now and talk about coffee and tea and whatever percentage you have. So let's look at our circle or ellipse tool. Let's click one time on the screen and make the ellipse 3 by 3. Exactly a perfect circle. And I'm going to move it. Now I'm looking at my properties, and I'm going to look at my extra property in a transform panel, and will tell you that there's extra stuff there. Do you see here? As soon as you click on your transform panel, it will tell you the certain thing that you can do here with this circle. First of all, I want to go in and fill it with light brown. And I'm going to say no stroke, none. So I have a brown little circle. The second thing I want to do is, look what I have here. I have a fill, stroke, and if I do the extra, it will tell you other stuff that you can do with it. What does it mean? You can either do it all the way here in the properties, or go to your circle and you see this little latch and start moving it, and look what happens. I can go in and create some kind of a pie. Does that make sense? If you wanted it to be exactly, you can look over here in your transform and decide how do you want to do it. 90 degrees, that's perfect. Does that make sense? So you see there's certain properties to your circle. Can you see that? Let me know if you see it. Now I kind of want to do a pie chart right away. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to use the pie chart here. I'm going to duplicate this circle. I'm going to show you another way to duplicate it. If you hold on your Option key and click on the circle, you see a double cursor, and you can click and drag a copy. That's another way of doing it. Now the new one, it's exactly the same, 90 degrees. But I'm going to click on my properties for the ellipse, and there is a little symbol there that says invert pie. Do you see that? If I invert the pie, look what happened. It's the same circle, but the pie is inverted. I'm going to go in and fill this one with green. And select that and move it here. And deselect. And select this one and say no stroke. And look what I have here. It pretends that I have a little pie. How cool is that? So I just did it with two circles. Did one and inverted the other one. Does that make sense? Now we want to go in and type something. So we're going to go to the letter T. We are not going to type inside, because as soon as the machine indicates that something is in there, it has a little round area, it wants to go in, it will take away the color. So I'm going to click on the side. The behavior in Illustrator is, as soon as you click, you can have something that says Lauren Absom, and let's say we're going to say 75% coffee. And I can highlight that, and now look what happened in your properties and all the way up in your control. Everything becomes your character panel. The default typeface for Illustrator is Myriad. So I can go and make it, let's say, different size. Let's say 16, and then I'm going to select it and put it over here. If I want to change the color, I'm going to click here and make it white. If I want to select that, I can also go to my character panel, click on the extra, and tell it I want it to be all caps. I can go in and make Myriad bold, and you see I have a different kind of type there. Yes?
How do you get the character panel?
The character panel, as soon as you select it, you're looking at your properties and the character panel is there.
So I missed the part of bring the text into it.
Oh, this one, how do I put this one here?
I wasn't able to get, like, I don't know how you got the text typed like that. Does that make sense?
Like this?
Um,
Like when you click on your screen?
I don't have it. I was trying to do it.
Okay, click one time with the type tool. You have to be on the type tool. Somewhere on the screen, don't click inside. Somewhere, that's it. Okay, and that's your character panel, and if you click on the extra, you're gonna get the extra character panel with you. If not, you do have the character panel all the way up on your control as well. Do you see that? It's a drop-down menu. So what if I wanted to do 25% T? I'm not going to type again. I'm going to hold on the Option key, click and drag a copy, go in and say 25% green, Shift Return T. And then I can highlight that, and you can see all the way up. I can even make them to the center, and I can go in and put it here, or whatever you have. I can make it smaller, I can make it bigger, but you can see the idea. You can bring text right away into it, and now I can actually select the whole thing and object and group. So basically I have a little pie chart. Later on, what else can you do with it? You can do a lot of more stuff. You can do even 3D with it. So it can be a lot of little things that you can create. Does that make sense? Same way, you can work with the polygon and other tools that we have. But I kind of want to move on and create more stuff from other things that we have. And I want to look at the align panel, how we aligning objects, and how we working with a Pathfinder to cut an object. So what does it mean? We can stay on this artboard. What if you wanted to draw a moon right now? And you say, whoa, I'm going to start doing it with a pen tool. It's going to take forever. Go into your ellipse tool and select a perfect circle. And then I might give it a certain color. Green moon maybe. But now I'm going to go to this one, hold on my Option and drag a copy. So you see I have two circles over there. And I decide where do I want to have it. Do you see two circles? I might do the next circle a different color so I can see the difference. And then I want the top circle to cut the bottom circle to create the object that I want. So let me know if you have it. And purposely, I did it with a different color so you can see. So where can you do that? There's few ways to do it. One way is working with your Pathfinder. And you can see it right away on your align on your properties panel. As soon as I have more than one object, you can see here Pathfinder. But for the sake of that, I want you to open the Pathfinder panel. so you can see it kind of like in front of you. So go to Window and bring the Pathfinder panel. The Pathfinder panel will always come with the Transform and the Align panel together. We don't need to use them together, but they'll come together. So now what I want you to see is the top object. It says Shape Modes. Do you see that? The first one is going to unite the object. What does it mean? If I'm going to click one time on it, look what happened. I got two kind of circles, one on top of each other. That's not what I want to do. I want to do Command Z. And then the second one is basically minus front. But what if I'm not sure how do I want to do the minus front? If I hold on the Option key and click on the minus front, look what it does. It will give you a preview how it is going to look. But if you're looking at your Layers panel, and then you're going to open it over here, it tells you still have one circle and another circle. So if you select this top circle and move it a little bit, you can see how deep you want your moon to be. Because you didn't decide yet. Maybe you want one like this, or want one like this, or want one like this. If later on you decide, you know what, this is the one that I want, if I select both of them and click Expand, guess what? This is your moon. Does that make sense? So what did I do now? I took one object and I drew with another object, and then I did minus front. Can you do it with other object? Absolutely. I can go to a circle and I can go to a rectangle and I can select one and select the other one and then Option click minus front. Look what I have there. I cut the circle, but now I'm not sure I like it yet. So I'm going to open the compound shape, go to the top one, and then maybe do stuff like this. Look how I cut it. I might even deselect and reselect it with my direct selection tool. Look how it's cutting it now. Does that make sense? And now if I select all of them together and click Expand, basically this is the object that I just did. So the top shapes that you have that they call shape modes, if you hold down the Option key and click, you can expand, do it like you want to, and if you click Expand, you make it completely to the real thing. So let's practice it. File and Open, because it's super important. Go inside your file, my files, and then you have a place that says Align and Pathfinder. And you can see inside you have different kind of shapes. So I'm going to go back here and then I'm going to double click on Pathfinder demo. And look what I have here. I have 4 artboards. And then we're going to go into the first artboard. It's basically, instead of you drawing now, I drew it for you just to create something. So what does it mean? If you select, let's say, let's go back to our Layers panel, and look what happened. You're trying to select something, and absolutely I can select something. Why not? Because everything is locked. Do you see it? So I'm going to go into my Layers panel and unlock the shape mode. This one. I'm unlocking, locking, unlocking. And now I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to select the rectangle, hold on the Shift key and select the star. And go back to my Pathfinder. If I Option click on Unite, it wants to unite it, but you still can move the front and any time or the back to create a different kind of shape. Because what you'll see in your Layers panel, it will call it compound. If you expand it, look what happened. It's one object. Does that make sense? The second one, the same idea. If I just click one time, look what happened. I already cut out, and this is the area that I have. You don't have to have one image, one object. You can have done bunch of objects and then cut them out to do corners, to do all kind of design. Does that make sense? Try it and let me know if it works for you. Then if I go to the bottom one, this one is going to intersect. That's kind of a weird one. And the last one is going to exclude. So basically the area inside, this is the area that it is transparent. So that's what shape modes are doing. If you hold on the option key, it will do like a shape group from it, and then you can move the stuff, and then if you expand it, it will do the shape that you have. Does that make sense? Now let's move to the next artboard. I'm going to turn off the other artboard. I'm going to unlock this board. And look what I have here. This one is the Pathfinder. What's the difference between a Pathfinder and a shape mode? A Pathfinder cuts the objects. Absolutely will cut any object that you're going to do and cut it to different elements. So I'm going to go to my layers panel. Panel option, make it a little bit bigger. Maybe even 60 so you can see it a little bit bigger. And look what I have inside. These are the objects that I have in there. I'm going to select one and hold on the shift key and select the other one. In this case, I'm going to go to the first one that says divide. Look what happened as soon as you divide. It becomes a group. Do you see that? When you open the group, basically what do you have in there? Different shapes. This one is one shape. This one is another. I'm going to go in. This one is another shape. And then this one is another shape. So what divide command is doing is dividing whatever you have and make from it extra shapes that you have. When do you use that? You use that to draw something and then divide your drawing to different elements and then maybe colorize it. Does that make sense? So let's check it out in here. You have the divide command before. What does it mean? You have a line and another line and another line and another line, and you have a rectangle. Do you see that? I want you to go into this one and select them. So I'm selecting all the lines and the different stuff in the circle. And then if you go to divide, that's what you're going to get. It is going to go in and it is going to be a group as soon as you divide it. And basically if you add to it a little stroke, look what happens. Look what the machine is doing. Each area is a different kind of object. So I can go into either direct selection tool or group selection tool and select and start moving stuff. Or select that and put another color. Select that and create another color. Select that and create another color. Does that make sense? So look what happens. All of a sudden, it used to be a circle, and now it's not a circle. It's a circle that divided to different kind of object. Does that make sense? So let's do one like this together. I want you to lock the Pathfinder demo and go to the next artboard and click on the practice layer. And let's create something. As soon as you do something with the divide command, it becomes a group. You can either ungroup it to find the stuff or use the group selection tool. So let's go and do one. Let's go in, let's say, to our rectangle and do one big rectangle. Purposely, I'm leaving it with a stroke because I want to see the lines while I'm working. Now, you go to your line tool. And all what I wanted you to do is click and drag and create lines all over the place from outside and inside. Just without even paying attention. Look what I'm doing. Outside and inside. Outside and inside. Do you see how I have a lot of lines around this rectangle? They have to be from outside to outside. Does that make sense? Not inside. If the inside, I don't do anything. And look at my layers panel all the way. I just have a rectangle and tons of lines. I'm going with the selection tool. I'm selecting the entire layer with the lines, and I'm clicking on the divide. And now reopen the group and look what happens. A lot of stuff in there. If I want to go, you won't believe, but it's going to be even little guys. Look at this. This little guy here. Deselect, reselect. Look at this. This is an object. This is an object. This one is an object. This one is an object. You see that? This is how I divided these little shapes. Does that make sense? Everywhere the line came across the main one, I created a new object. Does that make sense? So you can do it with different objects, one on top of each other, to create some other ways of working with stuff. So look at that. I have a lot of objects over here. If I didn't want to even divide, move them around, or what I needed to do, let's say I wanted to do some kind of a window that has a lot of colors. I could have select one and go in and start moving. So I might select one, hold on the shift key and select another one and do another color. And hold on the shift key and select this one and do another color. And select one and hold on the shift key and do another color. You see what I'm doing? I'm recolorizing different kind of areas. Now I'm going to go and find a yellow. And I'm going to select this guy and this one, and I'm going to make it blue. Do you see what I have? It looks like I have a window with different kind of colors or different kind of things. All these shapes later, when you start making something even more advanced, you can mask them into, put images in them. You can even type inside. What does it mean? We're not doing a lot of typing area, but just showing you. If I go to the type tool, and then I am going to go in to my properties panel, or I can decide I want to go in, and then with the type tool, I'm going to click somewhere. See what happened? Look what happened. In this little shape that I did, I have text in it. I can go to the type, and I can go in as soon as I recover. See here, I'm going to go in and click, and I have one here, and I have one here. So you can create some presentation that has different kind of shapes and with colors that represent something, and then have text on other areas that represent what you have, but it's not going to be so boring, because you can see I have it here, and the text takes away the color in the beginning. You can edit to later, but now I have text inside a certain shape. Does that make sense? So you can start thinking about how you're going to work with Illustrator to create certain things and work with them together with the Pathfinder. So the Pathfinder has some other stuff. You can also trim an area, merge, you can crop, outline, and minus back, but all of them are going to create another shape. Does that make sense? So now we're going to go in and look at another sample. Let's go to File and Open. And in the same area, you do have Shape Builder. And let's open that. And look at what I have here. I have a little background there, and there's a bunch of tools or some shapes together. I can combine a lot of stuff with a Pathfinder, but a lot of time you're going to do stuff with a tool called Shape Builder. So you're going to build some stuff and then combine them. Where is this tool? If you go in and click on Shift M, This is your shape builder tool. This one. The shape builder tool is not going to work unless you select first the components. So I'm going to go into the silly looking fork and select the top of the fork, and you can see here all the, and it's a group that has the top and the bottom. It is in the group, so that means that it's still not one object. What if you need to make it one object? You can use the unite command in the shape mode, but you can also go to the shape builder, click on one area and drag, and look what happened. They became one shape. So this one is automatically, if you select few shapes that grouped and you select them with your selection tool and click with the tool and drag over, you can make it into one shape. So now I'm going to select the next one, and look at that. I want to go in and make these guys one. So I'm going to go in and make this one one. But these guys, I want to cut a hole. That's not a hole. This is a circle that it's white. If I hold down my Option key, you see minus. Now I cut a hole, and you see minus here. And now I'm going to cut a hole. You see that? Now this one, basically, it's not a white background. If I move it here, that's transparent. So with the shape builder tool, when you hold down your Option key, you can go in and subtract stuff that you have. Does that make sense? And of course you have other kind of information. Let's say select this one and that one, select this one, and now I'm going to go in and click minus, and now it's going to be transparent. If I select these guys and these guys, if I want to combine them, now it's going to be together. So depending how you're going to work, you can play with the shape builder tool and then create the object to be back and forth to the same area. Does that make sense? Do we have other tools that we want to use to prepare some stuff? The next one we're going to look at is the transformation tool. And then we're going to create something that's going to be symmetry, almost like what you saw in the first thing that we did. And we're going to open for that some kind of, by the way, if you're looking here at the shape demo, and I'm going to zoom in, view, and fit all in window, look what I have here. I basically have 3 artboards. And if I turn on the other one, I have 3 or 4 artboards. If I want to send it to somebody, I can send that as a PDF, which will be file and save as in Illustrator, not an export. And then I can go in and save that as a PDF, and you can decide which artboard are you taking, all of them or some. And that's what you're going to do. And now I'm going to go in, view PDF after saving, and it's going to show it to me here. And look at that. Everything is there. And I have everything I just did. I have it here. But I want to show you the new one that you don't have, which is a presentation mode. What if I am in the middle of working with my group, and all of a sudden the teacher, the instructor wants to see what you did so far, but you did a lot of artboards and you don't want to do a PDF yet. So in 2019, you basically can go to a presentation mode. Where is it? Below the toolbox, all the way here, you have something called presentation mode. Shift F, that's your shortcut. And I can go in and start looking at the stuff. So I'm actually in Illustrator now. So if I don't like, let's say this one, in the middle of the I can do escape and I say, what don't you like? You don't like this? Let me just go in and move it around, and then I can go, okay, I think it's locked, but whatever it is. I'm gonna go back here. Oh, you want it here? Okay. And now I can go back to Shift F and I go back to a presentation mode. So I'm still in Illustrator. So I can present something and I don't need to have any escape, you go out of it. So use that to create some stuff, and you can present within Illustrator already and show somebody everything. Unfortunately, you can't do it in 2018. It's a 2019 feature. Does that make sense? So the next thing, we're gonna go and look and create few artboards, and we'll look at transformation. We'll do File New. And in this case, we'll leave it 8.5 by 11, but let's make it 4 artboards. And create. So look what happens if you have 4 artboards. By default, it wants to create something that looks like this. Why? That's how it comes on the machine. Can I move my artboards? I can move them only with the Artboard tool. Where is your Artboard tool? It's this one, all the way. Artboard Shift O. It looks like a crop. And you click and you start clicking and dragging and putting stuff anywhere that you want. And you see the Artboard has even numbers on them. So you can put them on the screen and anywhere that you want. And after doing it all the same size, you can change sizes for each artboard if you want. So basically, it's kind of like pages that you can fix and do anything to it. You can also have an artboard panel that you can go and rearrange it and name them within the artboard panel that you have. When you are on the Artboard tool, you cannot do anything but fix stuff with the Artboard. You don't draw with the Artboard tool. So click on the first Artboard, and let's say we're gonna call it Scale, because maybe on this Artboard we're gonna look at scaling objects. And we're gonna zoom into this one, and right away we're gonna go, let's say, to a rectangle tool. And we're gonna click and drag to do, let's say, a perfect square. I made that something like 3.5. And I am coloring it with dark red and no stroke. Now I want to scale this. How do you scale in Illustrator? Of course, I have the bounding box, and you know I can scale it. But what if you need to scale it in a certain way? If somebody says 25% point to, whatever it is, right? So you have a scale tool. Where do you do it? You can add an object. You can have transform, move, rotate, reflect, scale, shear, and transform each. But then on your tool panel, you do have the scale tool, the shear tool, and the reshape tool. And then you have the rotate tool and the reflect tool. These are basic transformation tools that you have. Click on your scale tool and look what happened on your screen. What do you see right away when you're on the screen with the scale tool? What do you see? It goes to the center. Do you see? Double click on the scale tool. A dialog box going to open and asking you, what do you want to do? Do you want to scale it uniform or non-uniform? Let's do uniform 80. Click on the preview. It's going to tell you it's going to look like that. Then they're going to ask you other stuff. Do you want to say OK or you want to copy? If you say OK, it's the new size. If you click copy, look what happens. You get another copy, and it is scaled, let's say, 80% inside, and I change the color. So I have two, one on top of each other. What if you needed to do another one scaled 80% to it? You no longer need to double click on the scale tool. Illustrator will remember what happens and go to Object, Transform, Transform again. And look what happens. Do you see you have another rectangle? I can go in and put another color. Object, Transform, Transform again. And I can put another color. And then maybe I'll do it more time. Object, Transform, Transform again. And I'm going to put another color. So basically, look what I have here. I have bunch of squares one on top of each other to the center, and now I can do select all and maybe object and group them. And now if I select it, I can also hold on the shift key, and I'm going to make them even smaller and put it here to the side. What if now I want to duplicate it and do it kind of a certain pattern that looks like something? So I'm going to hold on the Option key and go with the Shift key so I can see it straight. And you see, I moved it all the way here. And then I can say Object, Transform, Transform again. Object, Transform, Transform again. And Object, Transform, Transform again. So look how fast I did this. I can select all of them, put it somewhere to the center, and do Object and Group. And now hold on the Option and go in and do one down. And Object, Transform, and Transform again. The shortcut is Command D. Look how fast I did this. And now if I did Select All, Object, and Group, and I'm looking at my Layers panel, look what I have there. I have one area that I have all the stuff. You see, it's a group within a group within a group. That can be a beginning of some kind of a nice background for you guys. Does that make sense? So basically what Illustrator does, and that's what we're going to do another one, everything you do, if you do transform again, it will do it again. So if you copy, it will copy. If you move, it will move. Let's say I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to make that really, really small. I can hold on the Option and do that, and then transform again, and then Option and move that. And then if you see, it's not straight, I did it on purpose. So now if I do transform again, look what starts happening. It's shifting. Whatever you do, that's what it's going to do. Does that make sense? And I can make it, and look what happened. As soon as I did that, I can group it again. And then I can duplicate the group perfectly and transform again. And now I have all this area, and then select all and group. And basically that's how you're going to work with Illustrator if you have a lot of areas that you have to work with. Does that make sense? So I'm going to lock this group, and I'm going to move to the next artboard. We're going to look at another situation. When I double clicked on the scale tool, what happened? It went to the center, right? What if I wanted the image not to go to the center? So I want you, let's say, to go into Ellipse tool and click and do one big ellipse. And now just click one time on the selection, on the scale tool. But you see here, it wants to scale it to the center. Hold on the Option key and find another center. And let's say click copy. See what starts happening? Now I can change the color so I can see the change. And if I do transform again, and transform again, Command D, and then I'm going to go back and do this color, and maybe this color, transform again. You see what happened now? Now it looks like it's not really aligned. Does that make sense? Because what did I do? I chose another center. But what if you change your mind after doing it and said, this is ugly? I kind of want all of them to touch the top. Look what's going on in your Properties panel or all the way in your Control. You do have the Align panel. You can decide that you align to Selection and align everything to the top. Or align everything to the bottom. Do you see what happened? Or align everything to the side. Or align everything to the other side. So they are still in the individual object. Does that make sense? So all your transformation tools by default wants to go to the center, but if you hold on the option and click on another center, you can find another center to work with. So how would we work with it if we want to go and do something? I'm going to group these and lock the group and move to the next artboard. And now we're going to make a flower. How many times you need to do any kind of drawing and you don't feel like drawing even? Go to your ellipse tool and click and drag a small ellipse. And I'm going to make it dark red. Now I want to rotate these guys. But I don't want to rotate it to its own. I want to rotate it to make a little flower around. So I'm going to go my rotate tool, option click and give it a little space. And then I'm going to say, let's say 36 and copy. I can change the color of a petal if I want, or I can just do object transform again. Command or Control D. Look at this. What did I do now? I just made a flower. Does that make sense? Using the rotate tool. Does that make sense? Do you guys want me to do it again? I have that. I'm going to go to the rotate tool. I'm going to option click a little bit offside. And I'm going to do, let's say, 45 now, whatever, and copy. See, now 45, they're not touching each other. The other one they were touching. Object, transform, transform again. I'm not deselecting anything because if you deselect, you know what's going to happen. It's not going to do it. So now I have some kind of a flower that looks like this. It will remind you something that you opened it in the beginning. Remember you saw some flowers when I opened the symmetry? We're going to do the same thing. Now I want to take this flower and transform him to the center. So I'm going to double click on the scale tool. I'm going to scale it 80 and click copy. And while the copy is still selected, I'm going to change the color. And then transform again. And I'm going to go in and transform again. So look what happened. I have flower that has different colors. I can select that and group and make it even smaller. And now I'm going to make what you saw in the beginning, a radial symmetry. Click on the rotate tool and not click on its own center. Find another center. And maybe make it 36 and copy. Add transform again. You see what happened? This is basically what I did in the symmetry that you saw. I did different shapes. I combined them to different kind of circles. And then just use the transformation tool. Does that make sense? And then I can select all and group it. So you see this one gonna be a group. If I want to add some other stuff, I can do other stuff. I can go into, let's say, the line tool. And I'm gonna make the line, let's say, black. And now I'm gonna double click. I'm going to cancel it. I'm going to option click to the center and then click copy and transform again. Does that remind you something? You saw something like this more or less in my transparency. And I'm going to go and group it. And then I can go in and select it. So I'm going to select all and put the other one on top of it. So you see the lines are below. Does that make sense? So if you're going to open the first one I just did, and then recent, and I think it's called shape ungrouped, basically look what happened here. No big deal. If I'm going to go into, let's say, the lines, see all the lines were rotate to the center. If I went into this one, they were And then I have the flowers. So what I did the flower, first I made the flower the way you just saw, then grouped it, and then rotated around the corner. Does that make sense? So basically I can go into, you can create different kind of symmetries like this. So if I'm going to do select all and zoom out and then select that and even make it very tiny and go to the rotate and option click here and copy. Do you see what I just made? The only thing I didn't pay attention is to what's wrong with what I did now. I didn't pay attention to transform the strokes when I did it. So if I zoom out like this, if I want to go and make it smaller, I should go to the properties and I should say scale, stroke and effect, because I wanted to make it smaller, right? So that's the mistake I made. And now if I make it smaller, you'll see it's going to look a lot better. You see now the strokes are okay. Before that they were too heavy to what I made. And hold on the rotate tool and option click and then click copy and transform again. You see it looking a little bit better than the other one. Why? Because I paid attention to the stroke. Does that make sense? Now I can do shift F and show somebody what I made. Oh, I don't have other artboards there, sorry. But you can see that. Can I go in now and send it to somebody on the web? Yes, I can. I can, first of all, I can just select everything and go to edit and then go into edit, no, so file and export just a selection. And you're gonna see it gives you, and it's asking you where do you want to save it, what sizes of this do you want to go and do you want to make it a PNG and all that, and that's gonna be, and you can save it and put it on the web right away. It will transform for you artboards, and it will transform for you as well as just a selection. Does that make sense? Any questions? About the things that we, any question, anything you want me to repeat, to answer, to do stuff after what we did? Yes.
How do you, using the rotation tool, how do you make it into a circle, like paste it?
How do I made it like this?
Yeah, like to make it.
Okay, let's say I'm gonna make it smaller, right? And I paid attention that I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna go in here and I make sure I scale torque and effect. That's good. So let's say I'm gonna go and make that smaller, right? Oops, whatever, I didn't take everything. Okay, all right. Select all and I made it smaller. So now I'm gonna go to the rotate tool. It wants to rotate it its own center. So holding down the option key, you decide which center. So I'm going to click somewhere below. So everything you're going to do in the rotate tool now, it will relate to this center. Let's say I'm going to make it 45 and copy. While it's still selected, object, transform, transform again. Command D. That's your best friend in Illustrator. See, now it's going to do that. Can I do more stuff with this? I can mess it up completely. I can even do stuff like this. Look at this. And then go back here and hold on the option key and click copy and do again. If you don't click copy, it will just do the new one. See, now it's a little slower. Why? Because it's a lot of objects. Do you see why you need to do sometime either at least groups or layers? Because look how many objects I have here. And I didn't even start building. So if I do select all, look what's going on in here. If I'm gonna go and start even flatten let's say I'm gonna go in and flatten the object. And then I'm gonna go in and look at that. Do you see that? Hallelujah. It's all objects. Can you go to each object now and then go into your, I'm going to deselect, of course, and then zoom in. And all of a sudden you feel like something that you did here, it's not really looking good. And somebody send you something and you say, I want to go and zoom in just to this area and change with the direct selection tool this little guy. See, I can do that still. You see what happened? So it doesn't matter, as long as you have the direct selection tool, doesn't matter how many you did. Of course it's going to start being a little slow on you because I have so many objects, but if I'm going to go into this little star here, and just select that and move it, I can go in and do stuff like this. And it's just doing it to this area. Why? Because I'm using the direct selection tool. So basically this one is your best friend for everything. Even if before we move, let's say if you go File and Open, and in the files that I gave you, let's say you have colors and transformation, you have the same things there. Let's say you have even artboards. And let's say I'm going to go in and click on this one. It's a back of a postcard. Let's say you like a lot of the stuff there, but certain things you don't like. So you can go with the direct selection tool. I mean, this one is a symbol, but in general, you can go to the direct selection tool, because even this one is outlined. It's not really typed. So you see here, my father dragon got all kind of crazy stuff on it, because the type is actually a object over here, and you can go in and fix anything that you want. So everything that somebody's going to give you, if you don't like something, and as long as it's objects, you can change it with the direct selection tool. I can't emphasize it enough. Does that make sense? So if you feel like seeing the other class, we're going to do infographics. So we're going to go in depth more into the Pathfinder. We're going to go more in depth into text. We're going to go in depth into really building some and drawing some stuff with the pen tool and with the pencil tool and with some of the brushes. And I think we have it, I don't know, in 2 weeks, I think, or 3 weeks. I don't remember. I think next week there's no classes because you guys have a spring break? Fall break all of a sudden, right? So all the classes moved on. Anyway, so I'm going to